Fort Sherman jungle warfare training areas. Fort Sherman was likely existed as long as it did because of the mission it had to support jungle warfare training. It was 23,100 acres, and about half of that was covered with jungle. It had water, the Caribbean shore. It had a shore with Limon Bay. It had the Chagres River running through it and tributaries to that. It had a variety of terrain, some high points, low points, swamps, grass areas, and so forth. In 1951, jungle warfare training started at Fort Sherman. And it was run by, over the years, it was run by different organizations and had different names attached to it. In the late 70s, the mission changed. Originally, it was individual training of people from many units, and it changed to being unit training for units up to a battalion size. And as a result of the different people and so forth controlling it and change in mission, over time the training areas changed. And jungle warfare shut down in 1999, and Fort Sherman shut down later that same year. Some of the names that it went by was JOTC and JOTB. And JOTB, in fact, took part in Operation Just Cause with active mission. And some of the different organizations that ran it included School of the Americas, the 193rd Infantry Brigade, and so forth. First place we'll look at is up here, but before I zoom in, I want to come out some. This is actually the Toro Point area of Fort Sherman. And this is where the housing and barracks and so forth were located. So many of the areas out here on Toro Point were used at one time or another for jungle warfare instruction prior to them going out and actually performing a mission in the jungle. So the first one here is actually what used to be an old housing area. Early in the days of Fort Sherman, this area contained actually quarters constructed of wood, which were later on torn down. And we can see that this area is one of many areas that was reported by Joseph C. Reith. And as I mentioned, this used to be quarters at one time. And if we look at some of the attachments, first off, we'll look at the 1969 low resolution view, which of course doesn't show as much detail, but this is the area we're talking about out here. This is a picture that was taken in the late 60s, early 70s by Edwin Armbruster. And again, this is showing Toro Point. You have the barracks here that were lined up along Limon Bay and Shelter Bay. And the area that we're talking about is out in here. And I just wanted to put a picture in. This is from 1969. There was a video that was entitled Jungle Operations Training Center, JOTC. And, there was a shot of the barracks that I showed you back here. I had the sign on there, and that's when they weren't out in the field and so forth. This is where they stayed. The next area is, this is a complex of batteries, coastal defense batteries, that were on Toro Point, and they were aimed out here into the Caribbean and so forth, to defend the canal. And they were built in the early 1910s, like 1913 or so forth. And the areas that we have in here includes, let's see, we have Battery Bayard, Battery Howard, Battery Mauer, and Battery Stanley. And Battery Mauer, if I come in, is located over in this area, and it's possible, at looking at things through the years, that the marina that was built here on Shelter Bay has a storage area for boats, and they may have encroached on or in also Battery Mauer. The big guns were dismantled between 1946 and 1948. And after that, excuse me, the batteries were used for a number of purposes, including storage, training. The jungle warfare people would use some of these as training areas, mainly instruction, and also for landscape maintenance purposes. And if we look at the attachments, okay, again, this is the low resolution 1969 view. We're talking this area out here. And on this canal zone map fragment, it kind of runs off, but it's like here and over. Okay, now this is a map from 1921, and it was revised over the years and so forth, but this is what was used to lay out the different coastal batteries and the facilities at Fort Sherman. And the area we're talking about is out here. And you'll notice that you have the different battery locations listed. And here's Mauer I was talking about earlier, and Stanley, and they have little circles and so forth around them. And the reason they have that is that the batteries had observer points and so forth to help direct fire. And let's see here. Going back to Edwin Armbruster's late 1960s, early 70s view, we're talking about this area in here where the batteries are located. And this is a view that was from, we don't know exactly what the date was on this, but it was from Wikipedia, and it's a Battery Stanley. And this is one that Bill Mack's CZ Images had this photo, and it's from the early 2000s. And this is also from Bill Mack, PC Images. And this is a photo from the 1920s, and it shows one of the artillery guns in here. And before we leave this, I want to go ahead and pull up one of the sources that I used for this, along with other information on Fort Sherman. And it's entitled The Early Days of Fort Sherman, but actually it covers from the time Fort Sherman came about all the way until 1999 when it shut down. And it not only discusses the posts, it also goes through with the batteries and what their purpose was, how they were armed, and so forth. And over on the left-hand side here, there's a number of links to old historic pictures and also maps. And the 1921 map that I showed you was attached to here. Okay, the next point. This is actually another battery, old battery. However, as opposed to the ones we were looking at before, this one was for protection in Limon Bay, whereas the others were protecting out here in the Caribbean Sea. And this was called Battery Kilpatrick, and built around the same time as the other ones. The guns were removed in the same period, 1960 or 1946 to 1948. It was used after the guns were out. As with the others, it was used for storage, training purposes, and also landscape maintenance purposes. Now, one thing that's interesting about this one, as opposed to the others, is that JOTC set up a zoo, and they used the old battery to do this. And they had all the different types of wildlife that the people going through training might run into on Fort Sherman. And they had flooded, like the old gun pits and so forth, and they had alligators in there. I mean, they had birds, they had reptiles, they had, all the different mammals, monkeys, and all that type of thing. And there were times when, it wasn't being actively used for jungle training and so forth, that it was open to dependents and Panama Canal people and so forth. So if we look at the attachments, our 1969 low resolution were right here out on this point. And as I said, it was designed to protect Limon Bay. And again, this is a CZ map fragment. And this one actually has it labeled as Fort Sherman Zoo. So we're right in here. And our 1921 map from the early days of Fort Sherman shows Battery Kilpatrick out here. And once again, we've got the gun emplacements, but we've also got the observer points and etc. And going back to the same photo done by Edwin Armbruster, late 60s, early 70s. This right in here is the Fort or Battery Kilpatrick. Now, this is a picture from Bill Mack's CZ Images, and believed to have been taken in the 1920s, but the battery is in the background here. Here's another old photo, and the date's not known. It was believed to have been taken when some housing and facility studies were done a long time ago, but this is Battery Kilpatrick. And finally, we have one of the folks going through jungle warfare training is getting to have an up close and personal experience with the boa constrictor. And this is actually another photo from the 1969 video JOTC, as was the guy holding the snake. And you can make out the battery in the background. This class has just graduated. They're passing a review on the old airstrip, and you can see just the edge of one of the barracks over here. Okay, the next spot is over across Shelter Bay and over by the marina again. And this is the former location of Sherman Tower that was used for training. And this is, of course, the tower is long gone. But it's had many encroachments over the year too, both by the marina and doing construction and with boat storage. But also there was a period of time when improvements were done to the breakwater, which runs out here. And during that construction, it appeared that they stored material and equipment and all that all along here. So looking at our 1969 low res, we're talking this point right here. And with our map fragments, with Canal Zone, it would be in this area right here. And back to the same photo from Edwin Armbruster, late 60s, early 70s. You can kind of make out the tower over here. Okay, now we're moving out of the main area of Fort Sherman. And we've moved down S8 Road, which runs from the main part of Fort Sherman all the way out to Fort San Lorenzo and beyond. And Fort MacKenzie was also a former gun emplacement that was put in the early teens, 19 teens. And as you can see on the current view, it's still fairly clear over and around the battery itself, but we're in the midst of dense jungle. And originally this was called Battery Shaggers 2, and then later renamed to Battery MacKenzie. And the guns, just as on Toro Point, and were dismantled between 1946 and 1948. And after that, this one had kind of a different life. At one point, they used this in the area to actually billet some of the troops. In the 1970s, it was used for field operations for jungle warfare training. So when they were out, training in the jungle and so forth, the operations were run out of MacKenzie. Also, Battery MacKenzie at one time was the location of the zoo before it moved back to Battery Kilpatrick. And later, the battery was used by special forces. And if we go to our 1969 view, you can, even though it's low res and so forth, you can make out that, there's a clear spot there in the jungle. And here's a photo from the 1920s. And this is from CZ Mac, Canal Zone Images, and it shows some people who were fortunate enough to have tents to live in on top of the battery. And I put this in here. I mentioned the S8 road that comes out of Fort Sherman and runs along the batteries and out to Fort San Lorenzo and beyond. And this is a photo I took of S8 Road in January of 1973. And this is actually one of the more open areas of S8 Road. Once you get beyond this, the road was up and down and curved, and it was gravel. And during my time in the Canal Zone, more than one person ended up on those curves, running, losing traction, running off the curve and down an embankment and into the jungle. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I was there on Fort Sherman in February of 2020, and we were in a coach, and the coach, we decided we wanted to go down past some of the places we knew along the way and also go see what Fort San Lorenzo looked at that time. And number one, the road was in horrible shape. So we were shaking around. But the other thing was, all the way down S8 Road, there were branches scraping the top of the coach and the sides. Now, before we leave this area, I wanted to talk about another thing that this area is noted for, or reportedly noted for. This right here is Fort San Lorenzo. And the road, S8 Road, which you can't see very well here, actually continues down to this point down in here, where you had Semi Beach. This is the Chagres River coming out, and the mouth of the Chagres out to the Caribbean. And there was also a little concrete dock down here. And if anyone was familiar with it, across the Chagres, this is Pina Beach. And it had like a little sandbar that came across, and the dock was right across from that. Okay, next. This is an area that is pretty much off in the jungle, but this particular area in itself has a little variety of some lower vegetation and so forth as well. And it's out here in the middle of nowhere. I mean, here's S2 Road, and here's the Chagres River. And one of the things, I mentioned that Joseph C. Reith was the reporter for the Jungle Warfare training areas and so forth. And one of the comments that he made is, he said, I remember going through JOTC in 1974 on a cloudless day, and we all heard an airplane fly low overhead, but didn't see it because of the jungle canopy. And a short time later, it was raining lightly. The rain tasted like nothing I'd ever tasted before. I'd never had the taste of Roundup or anything like that, but if I had to compare it to any chemical, Roundup would be it. Now, this particular training area was accessed from S2 Road by a two-track, trail through the jungle. And if we look back at our 1969 low resolution image, we're talking here. You can see S2 Road there, and there was a track through the jungle that came back out to here. And this is another screen grab from the 1969 JOTC video. And this is a guy working his way through some of the jungle vegetation. And the sequence that it's in is that these guys are trying to come down here, and some of the instructors and aggressors would be hiding behind trees and take shots at them. Next area. This is further down in the Fort Sherman jungle. We have an area surrounded by dense jungle, and there were some structures and so forth, and some area cleared. And it appears that some of this may still be used today. Once again, it had access out to S2 Road by a two-tire track going through the jungle. And you can kind of see where it comes off of. This is S2 Road. Would come down, and this track would come through the jungle and so forth, and come out to here in the location we're looking at. And on our 1969 view, this is where we're looking at here. You can faintly see S2 Road out here. And this is another photo from the 1969 JOTC video, and this is one of the exercise areas, and they had a little village set up there. And part of the scenario was that they had a lookout, and if the lookout saw US or South Vietnamese coming, he would holler, and they would take down the Viet Cong flags and put up, South Vietnamese, and vice versa. If he saw NVA or Viet Cong, he would yell out, and they would take down the South Vietnamese and put up the Viet Cong or North Vietnamese flag. Okay, this again is an area that's it's surrounded by jungle, and over here, not too far away, is the Gatu drop zone. And as you can see, some of this area is still being used today. It was accessed the same way as the last place we looked, out here to S2 Road. The trail through the jungle came up and met the trail from where we were looking before, and came out here to S2 Road. We'll look at some of the attachments here, and this is where we're talking about at this point. And there's S2 Road out here. Okay, and again, from the 1969 training video, they had an area that was set up as a Vietnamese village, this time, straw huts and so forth.
I'd like to thank veteran Richard Wyman for putting together all of this information on possible places to test in the Panama Canal Zone. We are further than we have ever been before. We have a rulemaking request that's been granted by the VA Secretary. We have an HR 5026 bill for Panama introduced into the Congress.